Wellness warriors, I am always asking you to double check yourself, to verify the information that I give or anyone else gives, because I want you to be healthy. And in today's video, our topic is ketones, but there's two incidents that made me make this video. The first one was a video that we recently put out where Pat and I are talking about nightshades. And in that video, before we published it, I realized that I made a mistake. I called celeriac a nightshade, and I had to make a correction in the video for you guys because I want to give you good information. The second incident that happened, which is the reason I'm making today's video, Patrick got blood work done. And we were going through the blood work, making a video about it, and his ketone numbers were showing 1.5. We were super excited because he's doing low carb, and yet he was showing 1.5 ketone numbers. So he mentioned that in his research, it said 1.5 to 3 was optimal numbers. But my recollection was that you were really aiming at 0.2 to 1. This prompted me to do more research, and we ended up not putting the video out because we found some significant errors. For those of you who are meeting me for the first time, my name is Violet Rivera, and the reason that I make these videos is because when mental health and physical health are working well together, that's when we experience that overall sense of well-being. If you find this kind of video helpful, subscribe because I make new videos every week. Well, when I started to do the research, I found a brilliant video by Dr. Ali, and I've watched many of his videos before. This video is only 10 months old, and it explained some very interesting things about ketones that we're going to go through today. And by the end of the video, you're going to understand why having a ketone blood reading of 1.5 is actually not the be-all end-all of your ketogenic lifestyle. So seeing Pat's numbers at 1.5 really is what prompted me to do more research to figure out if my 0.2 to 1 number was right, and what does it mean that you're at 1.5 but not losing, because Pat's quite stable right now. In my research, there was some key information I learned from Dr. Ali that completely transformed the way that I was thinking about being in ketosis. The body, the same way that it strictly regulates the sugar in your blood, so how much sugar is there, that 5 grams, actually strictly regulates your ketone levels as well. Remember, there's this condition called ketoacidosis, which is deadly, which is having too much ketone in the blood. So the same way that excessive sugar in the blood, deadly, excessive ketones in the blood, deadly. And the reason that we don't get into these situations is because the body strictly regulates this. Honestly, by this point, I shouldn't be surprised that the body strictly regulates ketones because the body strictly regulates everything that we eat. It's going to be used for what it's supposed to be used for. And it's going to be contained if it needs to be contained. So store it away as fat where it's not going to harm us if that's what's the best use for it. So ultimately, this is now a conversation about energy usage in the body. And what Dr. Ali explained is that our entire body can use carbohydrates, ketones, and fatty acids as energy. However, our brain can only use carbohydrates and ketones. That's the first really important piece of information that we need to hold on to. The second really important piece of information is our brain is 2% of our total body mass, and yet it uses 20% of our total body's energy. The third important piece of information is our brain never compromises on the amount of energy that it will receive. Meaning, if your body is depleted in energy, your brain still gets the total amount of energy that it needs, which means other parts of your body will get less energy. The fourth really important thing that I learned is that ketones are produced by breaking down fatty acids in the body, which I knew. But what was new was that in that process of breaking down fatty acids to make ketones, there's a feedback loop that causes fatty acids to stop being broken down when there's a certain amount of ketones present in the body, which means that you can't overdo your ketones, like naturally from eating food. Your body will stop the production. So fatty acids will stop being broken down so that we don't go into ketoacidosis. So when we look at the energy sources, if I eat a standard American diet, my brain will be fully fueled by carbohydrates. If I allow myself to do 3 days of fasting, then all of a sudden, my brain will have 30% of its energy coming from ketones. The rest of that energy will come from carbohydrates. If I do 5 days or more of fasting, 60% of my brain's energy consumption will come from ketones, and 30% will come from carbohydrates, and there's another 10% of energy which they couldn't measure. What's really important for us to understand when we're talking about the brain is that no matter what's happening, if there are ketones available in the blood, the brain will take 15%. So again, when we're looking at the total consumption of energy that the brain does, depending on if you're not fasted at all, 3 days fasted, or 5 days fasted, you will get that 100% carb because our body is in carb mode and it's not in ketosis. Or after 3 days, you will get 30% ketones that the brain is taking, but that 30% of its total energy that it's getting from ketones, it's actually taking 15% of whatever the blood has to offer to get that 30%. And then, of course, when we're 5 or more days fasted, the brain is pulling 15% of the available energy, so the available ketones from the blood, and that ends up making up 60% of the energy that the brain will use. Now, when we talk about the body actually functions differently when it comes to its ability to take ketones out of the blood. So, as I just mentioned, the brain will take 15% no matter what's happening, versus the body has an inverse relationship with the amount of ketones it can take out of the blood. Meaning, the more ketones that are available, the less our body has the ability to pull ketones out of the blood. The less ketones are available, the more our body can pull ketones from the blood. And what he was able to show is that when there's a lot of ketones available, our body can actually take about 2 to 5% of what's flowing in the blood out, versus when there's just a little bit of ketones, our body is able to take 50% of what's flowing in the blood out. However, our body will never take more than 7% of its total energy from ketones. It will use fatty acids and it will use carbohydrates, not ketones, as its main energy source. I want to give you a really practical idea of what this looks like. So I'm going to give you the numbers so we can actually start making sense of this. And what ends up happening is that, let's talk about the brain first. Since my brain can take 15% of whatever ketones are available to it, if I'm 0.2 on my level of ketones, so blood reading 0.2, my brain will be able to pull out 0.03 ketones out of my blood. However, if my reading in my blood was actually saying 1.5, then my brain would be able to pull out 0.225 ketones out of my blood, versus the rest of my body, which has an inverse relationship. So when there's a lot of ketones available, it takes less. So and when there's a little bit, like 0.2, it takes more. So at 0.2, my body would be able to take half of the ketones flowing through the blood out for energy, which means it would take 0.1. But then when I have a lot of ketones flowing in my body, so let's say I had a 1.5, that would mean that my body would only be able to take 2 to 5%, so 0 0.03 up to a max of 0.075. It's less than the 0.1 it gets when I have less. So actually, the brain picks up so much more energy when you're high, but the body picks up so much less. Now, here's the part that we need to focus on. Remember I said there's a feedback loop? Part one, the brain getting all this energy means that the brain will always have energy because there's going to be ketones, and it's going to get always the same amount of energy that it's supposed to get, no matter what's happening. But that feedback loop that's happening, that's causing the body to take so much less energy, also is causing us to break down less fat, because breaking down fat is what creates ketones. And if we produce too many ketones, we could slip into ketoacidosis. Now, my body is too smart to allow me to do that. So what's going to happen is that around 5 or 6 days, which kind of explains why I never make it past 5 days, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I always get pushed to eat around 5 days. And around that time, why? Because my ketone levels are now extremely high. I'm not eating any carbohydrates to feed the rest of my body. My body cannot keep breaking down fatty acids because that's going to cause me to get higher levels of ketones, which could push me towards ketoacidosis. I get forced to eat by my body. But what's the other reason that could push my body to be at 1.5 if I haven't fasted for 5-6 days? Exogenous ketones. So I want you to think about this. This is super important. For everyone who's taking exogenous ketones, believing that you're helping your body to break down fat faster, in fact, what's happening is that those exogenous ketones floating around in your body are causing fatty acids to not be broken down, because breaking down more fatty, so because my levels of ketones are high, if I break down more fatty acids, it pushes me toward ketoacidosis. Bad thing. We don't want to be in ketoacidosis. So my body is just not going to break down any more fat. So in our effort to have high keto numbers on a blood measure, we're actually stopping our body from breaking down the fatty acids, which is what's going to help us to lose the weight. I hope this helps you to understand why you might not be actually losing weight despite having good keto numbers on your blood readings. Our body is super complicated. And when we try to shortcut things, our body is not going to let us shortcut things that are important. So many people I know do super long fasts thinking that, oh, if I just don't eat, I'm going to lose the weight faster. But this research that Dr. Ali is bringing to the front is showing us that actually doing super long fasts repeatedly over and over, well, too often, actually is slowing down, I can't say for sure it is, but it could be slowing down your weight loss and help explain why you're still struggling. Because as soon as those numbers get too high, your body's going to shut down all of this fat breakdown because it wants to keep you healthy. This is especially the case if you're starting your ketogenic lifestyle because you already have some kind of insulin resistance or metabolic issue. Again, it's so important. Don't take my word for it. I'm going to link Dr. Ali's video in the description below, but I also want you guys to talk to your keto-friendly doctors. I want you to do your research. I want you to watch more videos and get more information and do things appropriately and give your body the time it needs to heal. There's some videos on the screen right there that are going to help you to continue to improve your health. Wellness Warriors, I'm always happy that you come back, and everybody who's new, welcome. I want to thank you for watching Mind Blowing Health and Wellness with Violet. Subscribe and share this video so that more people can improve their health.